A comeback story for Toyota. Profit surges in the 3 months to June as the firm puts last year's disastrous earthquake behind it. Crucial US jobs figures out today. They could help trigger the American Central Bank into action to boost the economy. Hello and welcome to World Business Report. I'm Alice Baxter. A busy day for company news in Japan today. Toyota has reported quarterly earnings. The car company saw profits surge in the 3 months to June to $3.7 billion. Well, an impressive turnaround from last year when it lost money due to the natural disasters at home and in Thailand, where many of its factories are based. Well, Marika Oi is in Tokyo and I asked her whether the numbers met expectations.
Well, in fact, the profit beat what analysts were expecting, as you say, quite a huge turnaround for Toyota, and it is on track to reclaim its title as the world's top-selling car maker this year. As you say, in the first 6 months of this year, it sold nearly 5 million cars, which is about 300,000 more than General Motors. Also today, we heard from Toyota saying that it will produce more than 10 million cars for the first time this year around the world, thanks to strong demand. But analysts are wondering whether this kind of strong performance is sustainable because the environment isn't too great. The strong yen that we keep reporting about continues to hurt its performance, but nevertheless, today's result definitely good news for Toyota.
And Marika, briefly, do we know what's behind this turnaround?
Well, the company lost money last year because of the natural disaster at home as well as in Thailand, where many of its factories are based. So I guess it was a very bad year for Toyota last year. So this year has been much better. I guess also the recall issues that the company had, it had been recovering, though late last night we heard that Toyota is recalling some thousands of cars in Europe as well.
And conversely, moving on from Toyota, shares in the Japanese electronics retailer Sharp have slumped today, haven't they? Coming in 8 times higher than expected. Why is that?
That's right. I guess that's partly because of the strong yen that I just mentioned. Sharp's performance has been slumping. Yesterday, after the market closed, it said that it posted a huge loss for the first quarter. It also said that it's cutting 5,000 jobs, which is the first time since the 1950s. So shares have been falling almost 30% today here in Tokyo, which is the biggest fall in many decades. Also, its bigger rival, Sony, its shares are also slumping about 8% after it's revised down its profit forecast for 2012.
Well, staying in the region, and the Tokyo Stock Exchange has approved the relisting of the country's national flag carrier, Japan Airlines. The carrier will return to the exchange in September and is looking to raise about $8.5 billion from the listing. Japan Airlines went bust more than 2 years ago in one of the country's biggest bankruptcies. Now, trading in shares in the banking giant Dexia have been suspended. French market regulators have not given a reason for the move yet, but earlier the Franco-Belgian bank reported a loss of almost $1.5 billion for the first 6 months of this year. Dexia needed a state rescue after the credit crisis of 2008. And after the turmoil on the market stemming from the Eurozone yesterday, today's trade could be dictated by the US with its latest job report. It's thought that 100,000 new jobs were created in July, leaving the unemployment rate unchanged. Well, another poor set of numbers could propel the US Federal Reserve into action when it meets next September. Michelle Fleury reports now from New York.
With employers hiring only tentatively, the crowds at America's job centres aren't thinning. And even those in work are struggling. Fred White works as a bike messenger 5 days a week. He gets a percentage of each drop-off he makes. But with deliveries down, he's had to take a second job, working in retail at the weekends.
I don't have health insurance, and paying the rent is just like, I have to really like slim down my, my costs. And I basically, look at things on a week-to-week basis. And I have a second job, so, that's really where, the difference is made.
Fred is among a growing army of underemployed Americans, those who are forced to work part-time jobs and would like more hours. With voters anxious about the future this election year, President Obama and Republican presidential hopeful Mitt Romney are both promising that their policies will restore prosperity. More immediate action may come from America's central bank. This week, Federal Reserve officials hinted they're prepared to do more to stimulate the economy if the US jobs market doesn't improve.
We actually get 2 more jobs reports between now and the next Fed meeting, which is in mid-September. So we'll see both the July and the August job report. I think if those average, below 150,000 per month, that would probably be unacceptable from the Fed's perspective, and that probably would get them to act again at the September meeting.
Without jobs, where will growth come from? Living paycheck to paycheck, Fred has no money for other purchases. One reason underemployment is holding back the economic recovery.
I see it on the street, like I see every day, delivery guys, cab drivers and everything, and I feel that there's this connection that we have that's not necessarily that everybody's pursuing some great dream of theirs, that they're just trying to survive.
Michelle Fleury, BBC News, New York.
And some more earnings news is due out. This time, the Brazilian oil giant Petrobras, the company's leading drilling operations in Brazil's deep water oil fields. But for all the money Petrobras is set to earn from exploiting such huge reserves of crude, its profits and its shares price have actually both been on the slide. Well, Jeremy Howell's been finding out why.
5 years ago, then President Lula brought Brazil into the league of oil heavyweights, announcing the discovery of an estimated 50 billion barrels worth of crude in the deep waters off its coast. The national oil company Petrobras, part state-owned, part private, became the hottest of all energy stocks. It raised billions of dollars on the exchanges from eager investors. But lately, Petrobras shares have been on the slide, falling by a quarter in the last 6 months alone, as profit levels decline. Petrobras is not extracting offshore oil fast enough to make the expected returns. The oil lies under thick layers of salt deep under the seabed and is hard to reach. The government is allowing no company but Petrobras to try and drill it out.
It's a sort of escalating technical problem which any company would be confronted in trying to deal with this resource. But because it's been given to Petrobras by themselves, of course that's making it more difficult because they can't readily draw on the expertise that there is around the world via the big international companies.
The government is also insisting that Brazilian companies are given the lion's share of contracts to supply the offshore project. That's meant to boost domestic industry, but has saddled Petrobras with equipment shortages, delays and rising costs.
At the moment, the domestic industry is not ready to deal with all of these very strict local content requirements. They don't have enough human skills, human capital, and on top of that, it is a situation in which it's more expensive to produce these things, this equipment in the domestic industry.
Petrobras has responded to its mounting problems by slashing its production targets. Investors are now realizing that however much oil lies off Brazil's coast, it'll take years longer than they'd expected for the company to drill it out. Jeremy Howell, BBC News.
OK, a very quick flash of the markets now in Europe. They are slightly up as investors await those US monthly jobs and unemployment figures. It was a different story over in Asia, though. That's all from me. More world business next hour.